The movie begins with a white-haired man sitting in front of the mirror. He is named Robert, and he is an acting teacher. The man looks at his reflection in the mirror and does some practice to relax his facial muscles and his voice tone. He practices his craft before the mirror for a while, and then takes a deep puff of a cigarette. The scene shifts and we see the man now sitting in a chair in front of the class that he is instructing. The class is small, with only a couple of students. They sit in a theater, and the man tells them about the meaning of life and truth. He instructs the group of aspiring artists, boldly declaring that what they are about to embark on is not mere acting, but an exploration of the depths of hell itself, where they will give birth to a monster. The man speaks loudly and with a dominating personality. Suddenly, he asks them to stand up and come forth. The group comes to stand before the stage in a straight line. Robert comes down from the stage and closely inspects his students. He comes to stand before a boy and asks him to demonstrate. Upon the boy's lost expression, the man gets a little annoyed and tells him to act as a monster. The student finally understands, then takes a deep breath and starts to make his impressions of a monster, roaring. To his dismay, Robert is dissatisfied with the performance and brushes him off. He then steps towards the next guy, who smiles foolishly at the man, immediately turning him away. Seeking a more authentic portrayal, Robert then turns his attention to a female student, urging her to take the stage and show them a portrayal of a monster. The girl looks a little nervous, but quickly follows suit. She gets up on the stage and Robert starts describing the monster that he wants them to portray. He gives a heated and passionate character sketch. The man is so worked up that his nose bleeds. As he speaks, we witness the girl bowing her head, as if delving into the depths of her being, and manifesting the monster that Robert described. Robert turns around to find her head bowed with her hair curtaining her face from the outside view. Time passes. Yet the girl refuses to raise her head, prompting Robert to demand her attention, commanding her to look at him while he speaks. Unexpectedly, the woman snaps, violently breaking Robert's hand and letting out a bone-chilling scream. As she looks up at him, Robert's blood runs cold. The girl's innocent face has changed and is replaced by a monster akin to the one he described moments ago. She howls at him, and the terrified man shrieks for his life. The entire group witnesses how the woman has genuinely transformed into a monstrous being. With another blood-curdling scream, the screen goes blank. The scene shifts to the day before the accident, and we see a young painter residing in his home and working on a fresh piece. He stands in a room, overlooking his painting and contemplating something. In his painting, he has portrayed a strange black monster in abstract art. As the artist is immersed in his eerie and unsettling artwork, suddenly a phone rings in the background, urging him to come out of his thoughts. He looks at his phone, but does not pick up the call. He is then again immersed in his painting as he starts working on it. In the midst of his creative process, he again gets a call, and this time picks it up. A man named Benny interrupts him from the other side. He expresses his concern about the pending artwork that he was required to complete by today. He urges Marcus to complete the piece quickly, as the client is growing increasingly impatient. Dismissing Benny's concerns, Marcus insists on being left alone to finish his work, disregarding the mounting pressure. He cuts the call and tries to focus on his art, but the man is not satisfied with it. Getting irritated, he decides to rest for a while. As Marcus takes a break from painting, he suddenly receives another call from someone. Already annoyed and on edge due to his art block, Marcus snaps at the poor girl on the other side, who sounds as if she is accustomed to him being a jerk. The girl, who is named Brody, excitedly informs him about being accepted into an acting class taught by Robert, an opportunity limited to only a few fortunate individuals. Marcus, however, dismisses the significance of acting as an art form and questions why Brody would waste her time pursuing it. He sounds very condescending as he makes fun of the poor girl's passion for acting and says that she only wants to get famous. Brody is hurt. Marcus pays no heed to her heartbroken voice and immediately cuts the call. Marcus then gets up and goes to the washroom. There he stands before a mirror, contemplating his own identity. He looks himself in the mirror and asks questions, like who he is and what is his purpose. The man seems to be in some sort of existential crisis. After asking himself profound questions, he reflects on how others have recognized what exists, while he wonders why he alone perceives what could be and questions why not. Suddenly, a sharp pain afflicts his abdomen. The man clutches it and slowly falls to the ground as the pain intensifies. He gasps and groans in pain, unaware of what and why his affliction started. He crawls in his pain state and somehow passes out on the couch. As he regains consciousness, Marcus finds a startling sight before him, a lookalike of himself, coupled with a menacing monster lurking behind him. As he looks at the happenings before him in shock, the monster suddenly slashes Marcus's lookalike's throat with a shard of mirror. Creeped out, the man quickly squints his eyes shut. When he reopens his eyes, the image before him has vanished. He gasps in relief, but unbeknownst to him, the monster now stands right behind him. The bewildered Marcus quickly calls Benny, rescheduling the client's painting pickup for the following day. As he turns to the side, he sees the creepy monster is now seated beside him, its piercing gaze fixed upon him. In a fearful daze, he agrees to whatever Benny says, without actually hearing him. Benny keeps blabbering on the phone. Meanwhile, the monster suddenly turns towards Marcus. Strange piano notes are being played in the background, and the scene then transitions to a painting prominently featuring Marcus, with the mysterious monster holding a red paintbrush. The screen abruptly fades to black, leaving us with an air of horror and uncertainty. Meanwhile, on the other side, we see a man named Eddie who is a horror scriptwriter. It is nighttime, the room is almost pitch black, and Eddie is deeply engrossed in crafting a chilling and horrifying story. His narrative revolves around a couple named Steve and Janice, who find themselves under attack when an intruder named Whistler infiltrates their home. The couple runs towards their bedroom, and Steve asks Janice to get in the closet while he comes up with an idea to attack the intruder. Before the intruder bangs his way inside the room, Steve quickly gets under the bed. The intruder slowly inches towards the bed, whistling, and before he has a chance to attack, Steve cunningly strikes back at Whistler from beneath the bed, wielding a box cutter. The intruder falls down and his knife slips across the room. Steve gets out and quickly frees Janice, who comes out of the closet and sees Whistler in a pool of blood. She seizes the opportunity to plunge her own knife deep into his chest, resulting in his demise. Eddie, filled with a sense of accomplishment, completes his story and revels in its sinister nature. However, his satisfaction is short-lived, as suddenly he hears someone comment on his story, calling it worthless and trash. In a horrifying turn of events, the sick psychopath Whistler has unexpectedly come out of the story. He appears before Eddie, belittling his work and deeming it worthless trash. Eddie is consumed by fear as Whistler scorns his inability to write a compelling and blood-soaked tale. He mocks the whistling scene, and then the Whistler proposes an alternative scenario, where Steve fails to reach safety under the bed, and the intruder gets to him first and smashes his head against the wall. While he speaks, the Whistler grabs Eddie's head and ruthlessly smashes it against the desk. With blood trailing down poor Eddie's face, the Whistler continues his sadistic tale, describing how he effortlessly breaks Steve's wrist and leaves him crumpled on the floor. Meanwhile, he breaks poor Eddie's wrist, who keeps chanting that this can't be happening. The Whistler throws him on the ground and then recalls the girl in the story, referring to Janice. He gets up and goes to get Eddie's girlfriend, who screams for help. As he speaks about the trashy plot of his draft, he puts the knife into his girlfriend, disregarding her pleas. Whistler ruthlessly slits her abdomen open, causing her lifeless body to collapse onto the floor. Taking the macabre scene further, Whistler plunges his hand deep into her body, extracting her heart, and callously tosses it aside. He expresses his delight at collaborating with Eddie, eagerly anticipating their work on a sequel before departing. The scene fades to Eddie's demise, and the screen plunges into darkness. The story continues, and we see a couple named John and Ivy who arrive at John's home. They are cheerfully engaged in conversation. As they enter the house, Ivy compliments it for being so clean. John then asks if she would like something to drink, and she asks for wine. As he is bringing her the wine, he expresses his curiosity about the meaning of Ivy's name. John is taken aback when she jokingly responds that it means Satan's daughter. However, she reassures him that it was just a playful remark. Their discussion reveals that they recently watched the movie The Whistler together. She expresses that the whistling thing was a bit too much, because if you are taking someone's life, you probably should not give them that much warning. John is surprised that she analyzed the movie so much. As they delve into their thoughts on the film, John finds Ivy's humor and demeanor quite captivating. Ivy reveals that she is an artist, specializing in sculpture. Intrigued, John expresses his desire to see her work sometime. Ivy offers to show him some pictures, and as she shows the Polaroids to John, he is shocked by their content. The images depict a man's head, impressively realistic. Perplexed, John is quiet for some time, captivated by the Polaroid. Then all of a sudden, he inquires about the nature of the pictures, asking where the body of the eerily realistic heads is. Ivy looks a little taken aback, and simply says that they look realistic. John thinks that he offended Ivy, and quickly admits his limited knowledge of visual art and apologizes. Wanting to establish a connection, he opens up about his own dream. John shares his childhood dream of becoming a rock star. Ivy smiles and comments her insight about art. She emphasizes that art is simple. It is not solely about what one sees, but also about the emotions it evokes. Intrigued, she leads John to the kitchen, asking him to observe her and share his feelings. John describes her as interesting and intelligent, but the atmosphere changes when Ivy takes out a knife and places it against her throat. She looks John in the eye and asks him to express how he feels in that moment. Nervous and frightened, John urges Ivy to stop and put the knife down. Ivy, however, states that she has transformed herself into art, shifting from being a girl to an emotion, and that his response is what made her art. She then puts away the knife, and they come back to sit on the sofa, where John admits to getting really scared earlier. She then encourages him to pursue his dream of becoming a rock star, saying that she will support him. Listening to Ivy's heartfelt words, John gets emotional and starts to lean in, but Ivy abruptly moves back, leaving the poor man feeling rejected and bad. He quickly apologizes and expresses that he felt that they were connecting. Although Ivy gives him hope, she does not pursue their intimacy. As Ivy abruptly leaves, John innocently asks if he should call her later. The woman smiles and tells him that she would be mad if he didn't. She then turns around and walks towards her car. The previous flirtatious smile now disappears from her features, replaced with a flat, cold face. Ivy heads to her car and sits inside for a while, contemplating something, but then her thoughts get the better of her and she decides to head back. As she returns, John opens the door and looks happy, but his happiness is short-lived as the woman hits him with an object, knocking John unconscious. The screen then goes black. Later on, our attention is drawn to an eerily chilling blue room, its ambience sending shivers down our spine. Within the room, an unsettling sight awaits as scattered human skulls catch our gaze. As the camera moves back, we witness the gruesome corpse of John turned into a statue of a rock star. His hand is tied around an electric guitar in a playing pose, to which human skulls are attached. His throat is cut, and blood is smeared all over his face and body. The blue light illuminating the room, and the eerie piano notes playing in the background, create a chilling scene that can terrify the soul out of anyone. Meanwhile, Ivy stands proudly on his side, having taken John's life and transformed him into a rock star. She then proceeds to sinisterly capture the moment with a Polaroid camera, and smiles before the screen fades to black. So, this is how she wanted to support him. On the other side, we see two scared girls. Tear streaks mar their faces, their eyes reflecting a profound sense of fear. Their pallid complexions give them an almost ghostly appearance, hinting at the harrowing happenings that surround them. It turns out that they are running from a bloodthirsty masked man who is after their lives. As they speak, it becomes evident that the psychopath after them is a man who one of them once babysat. As they cower near a tree, trembling, one of them decides to run, but as she gets up, the masked psycho emerges from behind the tree and smashes her with a huge axe again and again until she falls to her demise. Terrified, the other one runs for her life, but the ruthless slaughter, having finished with the previous one, follows her. She runs in the dark, and the masked man, making baby crying noises, runs after her. The screen zooms out, and turns out it is a movie that two friends named Hope and Brody are watching. The movie centers around a vengeful character who embarks on a murder spree after being neglected as a baby. As the girl in the movie reaches a house and bangs the door for help, Hope comments on it being the best movie ever created. Back in the movie, the psycho man finally catches up to the girl and, despite her pleas, takes her life in cold blood. The movie ends, and we see that it is titled Big Baby and is written by Eddie, who previously got slaughtered by the Whistler. The movie finally ends, and their attention is momentarily diverted when Brody receives a text message. She picks up her phone and is pleasantly surprised. The woman then squeals, making Hope nervous. Her friend gets scared at her screams and asks to reveal what happened. Brody cheerfully announces that she has been accepted into Robert Anderson's acting class. Hope also gets excited for her friend, and together they cheer up. As the excitement fades, Brody suddenly gets all anxious and starts questioning her ability. What if she is not good enough? She quickly starts becoming self-critical, sensing her distress. Her friend steps in with heartfelt words of praise and encouragement, gently guiding her back to a place of self-assurance. Through her kind and uplifting words, her friend helps her regain perspective, pulling her back from the depths of self-doubt and reminding her of her unique talents and strength. She gives Brody confidence, and the woman quickly brushes off the foolish concerns. Brody then decides to call Marcus, whom her friend does not like very much. As Hope starts talking badly about Marcus, Brody defends him, saying that he is like that because of his ex-girlfriend named Ivy, who was a total psycho and who messed him up. She then dials his number, informing him of her acceptance into the acting class. Meanwhile, Hope leaves to fetch more popcorn. Marcus picks up her call, and it turns out he is a total douche. He starts making fun of her dreams and belittles her art, saying that acting is just being fake and real art is what he actually does. Painting is real art, while she just wants to get famous. Brody quickly gets disheartened. Once the call concludes, Brody becomes a little sad, but soon brushes it off after seeing her friend. She quickly proposes the idea of going out to celebrate. However, Hope, while appreciative of the suggestion, politely declines, saying that she has a band practice, although she reassures Brody that they will have their celebration when she returns. An audible sigh escapes Brody's lips as she reluctantly agrees, understanding the importance of Hope's commitment to her music. Later, Hope goes to her band practice. Turns out she is in a rock band. They energetically practice their song and seem to enjoy it very much. As the practice ends, one of her bandmates starts sharing theories about music and its importance to the relationship between good and evil. He talks about how the different chords and notes of a song help in evoking different emotions in the consciousness of the ones who hear it. With all the zeal and zest of the world, the boy expresses his take on how to manipulate emotions using music, revealing that he has personally figured out a certain mysterious sequence of 6 notes that, if played accordingly, will manifest evil. His mates make fun of his theory and call out his bluff, but Hope becomes intrigued and asks about the notes. Everyone departs, leaving him and Hope alone, who insists on knowing about the notes. Happy with her curiosity and enthusiasm, the boy tells her the Sinister Sequence. Later that night, when Hope returns home, she finds it drowning in darkness. As she comes in and turns on the light, she finds Brody sitting inside, brooding. She tells her that she is worried about Marcus. The man has gone missing. He isn't picking up her calls, and she is scared for him. She thinks that something bad has happened, and so Brody is worried sick. Hope comes to sit beside her friend and urges her not to be so distressed. He must be in one of his moods and just ignoring her calls. Hope tries to cheer up her friend, mentioning the celebration party Brody wanted earlier, but Brody seems not to be in the mood for partying. She declines and goes off to rest. Hope sees her getting distressed and does not pursue it further, letting her go off to sleep and rest her mind. In the eerie night, Hope is left alone to party, and she suddenly remembers those 6 evil notes. She picks up the paper where she wrote them down and decides to experiment with. Hope goes to sit before the piano, and starts to play the 6 evil notes. Although she is initially skeptical of their significance, she plays different sequences. Her fingers move across the piano effortlessly. Meanwhile, up in her room, Brody, while sleeping, suddenly seems possessed. She gasps and starts clawing at her face. Her eyes go blank white as the notes play in the background. Brody undergoes a horrifying transformation into a monster and roars in distress. After a while of playing, Hope gives up and calls the notes stupid, unaware of the menacing demon that lurks behind her. She gets up and goes to the washroom, staring at herself in the mirror for a while. When she comes out, she hears a strange snapping noise and gets cautious. She starts to follow the noise, thinking it's Brody. As Hope reaches her door, the woman inside opens it suddenly, making her get startled. Brody does not look okay at all, but when Hope asks her, she says that she is fine. Brody has red-rimmed eyes, with tears welling up, and her face looks very pale. The monster that possessed her earlier seems to have become dormant. However, she talks in a clipped tone. Now extremely creeped out, Hope apologizes for waking her up and decides to leave, but Brody stops her. She tells her that they won't be seeing Marcus anymore, because according to her, something bad has happened to him. When Hope questions her, she becomes quiet and moves on to talk about Gabrielle Berlader. In that same clipped and creepy tone, she asks Hope if she knows Gabrielle. When Hope says that she does not, Brody starts telling the story of how Gabrielle was a maid in a southern French brothel. She worked there to pay her medical bills, and she was also the reason why Vincent Van Gogh chopped off his own ear. Hope is lost. She does not understand why Brody is blabbering all this nonsense. Brody suddenly then changes the topic and expresses a strange sense of confidence for her upcoming acting class. She tells Hope how she even prepared a monologue for her acting class, offering to read it for her. After her passionate recital of her monologue ends, Hope is left speechless and confused by her emotionally moving yet dark words. Uncertain about everything that she says and how she is acting, Hope bids Brody farewell and gingerly leaves. The confused woman slowly comes out to find solace on the couch. She sits there, thinking deeply about the strange encounter. While she is lost in her thoughts, suddenly she hears those ominous 6 notes being played on the nearby piano. Terrified, she looks in that direction, and her blood runs cold. The movie concludes with her fearful expressions, leaving the audience in suspense.